Please be seated now. Our service will begin shortly. Good morning, everyone, here in the sanctuary and those watching virtually. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Jersey Shore. We ask that you please place your cell phones in worship mode. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We who bring a teaching of hope, who welcome all our doors, the joyful, the heartbroken, atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, straight and gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, transgender, all who are searching and seeking, looking for more meaning, more service, more love. All of us gathered here together. My name is Marcia Fiedler, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I'm a charter member of this congregation and currently serve as chair of the nominating committee. Our worship today is led by Marcia Fiedler, coordinator for Jewish Studies at Stockton University. We join Dr. Fiedler as we discuss the very first episode of The Real Housewives, starring the patriarch Abram and his first wife Sarai and his second wife Hagar, also known as the first biblical baby mama. How could a relationship that was so right go so wrong? Video of today's service will be available on YouTube, on the YouTube channel later today. Those gathered live on Facebook, we welcome your comments as well as your joys and sorrows on the platform. Please remember that this video will be on the internet, so do not share information that should be kept private. Welcome to worship.
Set your intentions, dream with care. Borrow's a new day for everyone, a brand new moon, a brand new sun. So follow the sun, the direction of the birds, the direction of love. Breathe in the air, cherish this moment, cherish this breath. Tomorrow's a new day for everyone, a brand new moon, a brand new sun. When you feel like coming down on you like a heavy weight, does your heart say? What does your heart say? So follow the sun, which way the wind blows, this day is done.
Welcome into this place of healing. Welcome into this place of challenge and of growth. Welcome into this place of imperfection and aspiration. Here you are whole. Here you are holy. And here you are wholly loved. Our chalice lighter today is Jessie Connor. Please join with me in reading the words to the chalice lighting that are in your order of service. For the wonder and inspiration we see from the sun and stars and all the lights of the heavens, we light this chalice. Please rise and bow your spirit and sing our gathering hymn, Comfort Me. The words are in your order of service.
We're going to sing Comfort Me, then sing with me, then dance with me. You may move your bodies, should you so feel moved to do so. John's going to start off with us.
We will now light the children's religious education lantern. We light this lantern for our children and youth, and for us, celebrating the flame of faith lighted in each of us, honoring the light each of us brings into the world, rejoicing in the community that we create together. The children will now collect donations for the local food pantries, animal shelters, and the Coalition Against Racial Abuse. the courage to write whatever joys and sorrows you have. I will now read what you have shared. We wish David Wiesner and his family blessings and love as he rushed to Florida on Friday to be with his mom, who just took a turn for the worse. And Denise O'Meara just had major surgery to remove a cancerous tumor in a 7-hour-long operation. Her husband Harold reports that she is weak but alert and getting better each day. Dagavarian. Let us be in the spirit of prayer. Blessed and holy creation, universe of wonder, mystery beyond definition, we share today our joys and sorrows, listening deeply to the things that cause us to weep, to worry, and lifting our hearts as one at those things we would celebrate together. Our hearts are touched by this shared ritual, and we are connected. Beholding our hearts this morning, all of those who are caring for sick loved ones. We pray for the people of Ukraine and the earthquake-torn countries of Syria, Turkey, and New Zealand. We pray for those who are apart from us, whether by distance, time, or conflict unresolved. We pray for those who thirst, whether for water, dignity, or justice. We pray for those who are in danger and who yearn for safety. We pray for our small, blue, fragile planet. Amen.
John's going to play through it once so that you the 1, 2, 3, 2. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. We rest in this love.
Let us share in a quiet time together and reflect on our week. During the musical interlude, you may come forward and place a pebble in the water to acknowledge your personal joy or sorrow. And I intuitively I skipped this part, and so we'll go back to it. The offering is a sacrament of the Free Church. It is supported by voluntary generosity of all who join with us. More than 80% of our annual budget is supported by direct pledges and donations collected through our in-service offering. We hope that you will be as generous as you are able and support the ministry of our congregation. If this is your first time visiting us, let the basket pass. Your presence is gift enough. You can also text a donation to 609-293-4495. Or for those who are participating online, please visit uucsjs.org and click on the yellow donate button for ways to donate. The gift to the congregation will most gratefully be received. The ushers will now collect the offering. Thank you.
use the microphone?
Yes, because of the online community.
All right. There, what, that works?
Turn it on.
Of course. There we go. Thank you again for inviting me back into your home where I feel love, comfort, and serenity, which is very hard to find in a spiritual place these days. Just to give you a little bit about my background, my name is Marcia Fiedler. I am the coordinator of Jewish Studies at Stockton University. And about 900 students take Jewish Studies courses throughout a year, and I want to tell you that maybe 5% are Jewish. I have students from all faiths, no faiths, and even Muslim students have a comfort of coming to learn in our classes because it's open to everyone without any judgments. I'm very careful who I put into the classroom. I myself grew up in Pittsburgh in a very Orthodox family, and which meant that I went to Jewish day school, starting nursery school. Half the day was Hebrew, half the day were English studies. I always found it interesting that morning when you're most fresh, we had Hebrew and not the English classes, but that's irrelevant. My favorite subjects were the Bible, the Old Testament, as it's known to some, and I was just enthralled with the stories. And as I grew up and started teaching, I realized that I wasn't quite taught the truth. I was taught what they thought was the correct stories. And as I discussed the last time I was here with Adam and Eve, forget that her name's not Eve, we'll just put that aside, haven't figured that one out yet, is that Adam was actually standing there with her when she ate of the fruit. And that makes a really big difference in how a story is told and how a woman is blamed for the fall of man. And I was at a very religious wedding, and I was talking to someone about that. They said, "Where's that written?" I said, "Open the text. It's in Hebrew. I'm not making it up." And then my husband comes to pull me away. And I turned to the very Orthodox rabbi with the big black hat. I said, "And by the way, while you're looking, please take note of the grammar that's being used when Adam is given instructions not to eat. It's masculine singular." And with that, I walked away. I get the biggest pleasure out of doing that. When I show things, I'll tell you when I make it up, Midrash is commentary. So there's Midrash Marcia, and then there's Midrash of our rabbis from many years ago. And please feel free, you can stay. And I don't care if they make noise, okay? It should be a home for everybody. So I brought with me Woman's Commentary, one of my many different Bibles that I have. But I'm going to tell you, I made a mistake with this. Because as I was reading it and taking notes, and it was talking about Abraham and Sarai, or Abram and Sarai, it was saying that Abram took his wife, Sarai. But in Hebrew, it says he took Sarai, his wife. And to me, that makes a really big difference. How do you introduce people? And it's an activity I do with my students. Is this my husband, where I'm taking ownership of Rob? Or is this Rob, who happens to be my husband? And I have the kids try to understand where they have ownership. We'll talk about another time. But you know what's interesting? When we hear about Abram for the first time, all we hear is that period. I thought that was pretty interesting. But what do we learn about Sarai? First of all, it says he and his brother took wives. Oh, that word take really bothered me. Even though it was common, to me it should be a joint relationship. They joined together in marriage. Much nicer to say that. But the next thing we learn is that she was barren. It's mentioned twice. And I'm going to tell you, the first time I read that, I was really ticked off. How dare they identify her by her barrenness? And then, this is Midrash Marcia, Marcia's commentary. I said, wait a minute. He had loved her despite her being barren. He never questioned that. I said, that's your love. He took her with him as first his father, and then after God spoke to him and said, you have to leave this area. He didn't care what anyone else said. He didn't say, I need to get another wife. He didn't say any of that. He took her, and as I'm saying, with him. That's love. He's not listening to anybody else. So that's Marcia commentary, as opposed to saying, everybody, guess what? This lady's barren. And that's not what a relationship should be based on. But in Judaism, if a woman does not have a baby within a certain amount of time, you are required to find another wife. Because a man is required to have children and a woman is not. And some people do this, and it's not my place to tell anyone else what to do, what's right for them. And that's what I say about the Bible as well. There's a lot of commentary, and I would never walk up and say to someone, you're wrong, that's not what it says. All I'll say is, this is what's written in the original text. Would you like to discuss it? Versus what you think. It's really important to be respectful in my line of work. I'm not ready to be canceled. But to talk about it and in a respectful way, which is what we do in our classes. So to clarify, Sarai was not Abram's sister. So let's talk about, they take off, God talks to him again. We still don't know much about this guy, except that God spoke with him and said, take off. So they're traveling around, and there's a famine, and just as, and I have, making sure I'm doing my things in biblical order, just as about to get to Egypt, he says, do me a favor, you're really pretty. And they're going to want you, so please say, for my sake, that you are my sister. Because if you are my wife, as we've seen with King David and other people do, they're going to kill me. Now, you might think that's selfish on his part, but it's not. Because if he dies, she's left in that home for the rest of her life. She can't leave. She has no one to protect her. So many people will say, boy, she should have had faith in God. And he's trying to save her, not his own hide. Again, that's me thinking. When I see guys thinking, tell me, what are you thinking? Okay. So many people like to say it was wrong for him to tell her to lie. And I'm saying if he didn't lie, he would have been killed, because that's what they did in that time when you wanted the woman. And she would have been stuck there for the rest of her life. And I think she's the one with faith that said, sure, no problem. And when she was taken, and she was about to go to the king, God, it says in the text, believe what you want, God had a little, Pharaoh had a little problem, okay? You can describe it any way you want. It says that in some commentary, the bottom part of his body wouldn't move. Well, you could mean your legs, right? I can have a lot of fun there. Or the top part of his body wouldn't move with his hands, whichever. Whatever it is, he could not approach her. And so therefore, he sort of got an inkling that something was wrong, and therefore he went to Abram and said, what's your problem? Why did you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And I would have never taken her, which of course we know is not true. He gave him more money, he gave him more cows, and set off. And they continued, and Abram became a very wealthy man. And again, I would say, well, why didn't he go in a different direction? If you know someplace isn't safe, as I say, people who tell me they got mugged on the Atlantic City boardwalk at 2 in the morning, I'm like, what are you doing there at 2 o'clock in the morning? You know, so, but whatever the situation was, that's where he went, and that's what happened. As they continued to go on, this happened twice, by the way, not just once. I'm off one thing. All right, now comes the fun part. it tells us that Sarah's still barren. It's been 10 years. And so she goes to her husband, Abram, and Sarai, and says, I have and how is it brought out? An Egyptian, sorry about that. She has a servant, but she's not really calling her a servant. And the question is, where did she come from? According to the Quran, the story is also in the Quran, which is really cool. She was actually a princess of Pharaoh's. She was a daughter, and he was so impressed with the power of God. Actually, this part's not Muslim, just the fact that she would belong to him, that he said, you're better off with this family, this man, Abram and Sarai, than you are here. So if you can imagine what this woman, like, I now used to be a princess. I used to have beautiful clothes, not have to do anything, and now I'm living like a nomad. So she's not too happy about the situation, I would think. Very little is written about this. I've been searching back and forth. If you write Torah, you get one commentary. If you write Bible, you get another commentary. And very little is written about who she is. But the fact that Sarah says, take her, and I want to be very clear, take her to be your wife. She was not a concubine. She was not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, just get her pregnant and leave her alone. Sarai, and this was common in those days. You had many wives. And so, well, he didn't disagree. And she became pregnant right away. And then we get into the discussion, what happened? Did she, Hagar, become hati-tati? Like, I'm better than you. Look, after a couple times now I'm pregnant, and all these years you weren't? Or was it Sarai, who couldn't now deal with the fact that this woman was pregnant? And when Sarai asked her husband to go forward, she said, for not a son. She didn't care if it was a boy or a girl. She wanted a child. So that made a difference as well. She was doing it for herself, not necessarily for him to have a boy that will carry things on. And the child was going to be raised by Sarai, but I guess when a boy popped out, and there was the feeling that this child will carry on the lineage as had been promised, that stay with Hagar. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, Hagar's not what I would say Jewish. She wasn't following God that we knew. How did this happen? How is this acceptable? The rabbis like to say it's not. I don't agree with them at all with that. She raises the child and there's conflict. I'm sorry, before she raises him, while she's pregnant, there's a lot of conflict. And you get to decide who is the one who's having a harder time with this. And so Sarai goes to Abraham and said, you better get this woman under control because I cannot deal with this. You are the one, you slept with her, you made her pregnant, I want you to settle her down. And Abraham said, she's your servant, you do what you want. Wow. Yes, she offered her maidservant, but she did not think this would happen, and she needs help, and he's ignoring her completely. His couple skills are lacking in many, many different ways, especially with communication. Do what you want. So she was a little harder to her, and she ran away. I said, where'd she run to? You're in the desert. You know, you have no phones, no transportation, no water, and she runs away, and she's crying, and this is the beautiful part. An angel of God talks to her. Never heard the angel talking to Sarai. And says, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But let me tell you, you're going to call him Ishmael. And the words means he will hear God, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And God named him. And he's going to be a wild boy, and there are going to be many people against him. And I think, wow, think of Muhammad. Think of the Muslims. It's true today. But we have this religion, this wonderful religion, because of Abraham, because of Sarah. It wasn't a mistake. It was a beautiful blessing for many other people to follow God in a different way, just like here. I was like, wow, this works out perfectly. The opportunity to pray in the way that you're comfortable with. And so she goes back, and she has the baby. Jump forward not too much later, and Abraham, this is really important. Abraham goes out and he has a nice little conversation with God. And God says to him 3 things. 1, you're no longer Abram, you're Abraham. The letter is a hey, and that's one letter we use when we write that with just a slash. It's a way of writing God's name without being really holy. And Sarai will be Sarah, also with that same letter at the end. So they were both becoming more godlike. 2, you got to circumcise everybody. Every male needs to be circumcised, so that's another thing. And the 3rd thing he said to him, and Sarah will have a baby. And you know what he did? He fell on his face and he laughed. But I was never taught that. He's in front of God. He's talking to God, and he laughed hysterically, fell down laughing. And I never knew that. And he said his name will be Yitzchak. Guess what that means? Laughter. But the rabbis blame Sarah for laughing and not him. So, go ahead a couple days. Abraham runs home and circumcises everybody, of the men, and including himself. And he's sitting in his tent like, yeah, I know. When my teenage boys hear this story, they just sit there and sort of, oh my gosh. Yes, because to him following God's law to the letter was really important. And that's who he is. You're going to see through the stories, he listens to God's word by word, which is not always what we're supposed to do. There's a little interpretation. But anyway, he is sitting there, and 3 angels come to visit. And believe this or not, it's after the 3rd day, which is the most difficult. He jumps up, runs out to them, offers to wash their feet, and starts to get food for them because taking care of others is most important. Now, people weren't coming to visit him. So you could think, well, everybody knows what just happened in your group of people. Men need to be circumcised. So I'm not so sure I want to go out and hang with you guys. That could be one reason. And the other is that God said, let the old guy rest. He's just gone through something traumatic, but nevertheless, Abraham wanted to take care of other people. He wanted to preach, he wanted to give them food, and he wanted to give them shelter. So he runs around, and his son Ishmael does the same. He's teaching him how to do it. And they're sitting down and they're eating. And imagine we're in this room eating, and just right outside, and the doors are open because it's a tent, a man says, where is your wife, Sarah? So if you hear your name, you pop up. Oh, what are they going to say about me? They've never seen her. They don't know how old she is. They've never seen her. They just know she prepared food. And so her ears pop. Oh, they're talking about me. And they say, in a year she will have a baby. And she giggles to herself. Commentary tears this apart. What, she doesn't think that God can do anything? What, she laughs? That's why Yitzchak's name is Laughter. Forget the fact that God actually named him Isaac, Yitzchak, for laughter. And there are many, many commentary. And God says to Abraham, why'd she laugh? And she's like, I didn't. And he says, yeah, you did. What's that all about? So Midrash Marcia, commentary Marcia, was he was saying to him, relationships between people are most important. You can pray 3 times a day or 5 times a day and to God, but if you don't treat other people with respect, both men and women, then you're not doing the right thing. So to me, that was saying to him, you forgot to talk to your wife. You ran home and circumcised everybody, but you never told her what I said. The relationships, talking to your partner, discussing things with your partner. I teach my students that no one should ever be hit. No one should ever be sworn at or belittled. That's not a relationship. That's power. And that's not what you deserve. So we go into a whole thing about respecting themselves and so on. And why didn't God not laugh at Abraham when he fell? And why didn't I even learn that he fell? Because it was easier to just make the women, underneath, to have control. I read something. What did we learn from Sarah? You should be submissive to your husband because he took her when they traveled. I was like, oh my goodness. What do you mean? It's a partnership. You give, you take. It's not about one over the other. And if you think about it, we learned more about Sarai, Sarah, and Hagar than we even did Abraham. Well, I learned a lot about him. He needs communication therapy to learn how to work with his wives, without a doubt. And then Sarai does become pregnant. She has a baby. And when she is weaning the child, they're having a party, so everyone knows that it's Sarah's choice to wean the baby. And she sees something that she doesn't like. And she sees Ishmael and Isaac playing or laughing. I don't know what she saw, but she became so angry, she told Abraham to get rid of them. Send them away. He should not inherit with my child. So here you have a woman and her child. They're only there because of your doing, and you're saying get rid of them. The Quran beautifully says God told Abraham to take them away. And so he went with them and to Mecca. And so they have a time where you go there to pray and so on. So I love that. Take them where he's going to develop his own. He's going to become his own self. He's going to be in an environment that is really good for him. This environment isn't so hot for him right now. You don't want the wrath of my wife. So let's just move on. That's one thought. And Abraham doesn't know what to do. So he goes to God and said, what do I do? And God said, listen to her voice. Marcia says, her voice is showing pain. Her voice is showing anguish, depression. Listen to what she's going through, and instead he wakes up early the next morning. This rich man gives them some bread and some dates and sends them on their way. Again, we're looking at this righteous man listening to words and not give him a camel, give him some men, do something. Give them something to sustain themselves. And Hagar leaves with Ishmael. He is dying. And she leaves him just in a corner, walks away. She's crying. And again, a voice comes to her and said, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. So that's 2 times that someone has come to her and said, it's going to be okay. So that's where I say, wow, the Muslim religion follows complete suit with, there'll be many of them, people will be against them, but we're all from Abraham, one way or another. And then Sarah, and then Abraham and Sarah, within reason, live happily ever after until, of course, he is told to sacrifice Isaac. The Quran says he was told to sacrifice Ishmael. and that when the hand came down in place of Ishmael, a miracle happened, and there was a camel there, and it is some people's custom to give money or the amount of meat to another community to help others. Instead, he has his hand up in the Testament, and he's going to do it. And God stops him. Now, child sacrifice was common in that time. But to me, he failed the test. Why didn't he say no? You can't do everything literally the way God wants you to. Someone will say he passed the test because he was going to do it. And I say, no. Again, you're going literal, an eye for an eye. That's not what it means. We need to be able to read between the lines to have an understanding, and taking care of people is most important. We take care of our animals before ourselves. So before you go to do something, see if there's someone around you as you're driving to work or driving to services that may need food, that may need help. And that's what I think needs to be taught. And that's the lesson. So the original Housewives was just sort of like these two not getting along, fighting for power, fighting over things, fighting over Abraham. And so if you're going, but now where people have more than one wife, there is a community in Israel. They're originally from Chicago, and they have their own community. They do their own things, and the government lets them be. And there are other people who don't seem to have as much of a problem that I'm aware of. I didn't do research there, but it was common in biblical times to do that. Okay, so I want to conclude with, we want to believe what we read and what we hear is true. And I'm begging you, get 4 books, compare 4 different Bibles. BibleHub.com will give you many different...
What's it called?
BibleHub, HUB.com. And because I send my students there, because I want everybody to use a different text and to compare what are the words. When it says for creation and Eve was to be, I don't call it punishment, I call it premonition. It does not say he will rule over you. The word's mashal, it's an example. He will be an example for you. And people just have mistranslated it the way, or they just leave things out, like that Adam was standing there, which I think makes a big difference. We also make excuses for what would otherwise be unacceptable behavior. A lot of excuses were made for Abraham. It's like when your child's doing something wrong and you're the only one that doesn't see it. But what happens when the information is manipulated and Bible verses are reinterpreted to manipulate what you're learning and what you're hearing? Be like I did as an adult. Read. Look, fortunately, I go back to the Hebrew text, and that's how I'm able to do this and look at how things have been translated. Everyone's human. We all make mistakes. I just say women make fewer mistakes than men. Listen to your own voice. This is a poem I put up. Listen to your own voice, your own soul. Too many people listen to the noises of the world instead of themselves. Deep inside, you know what you want. Let no one decide that for you. And that came from Power of Positivity or The Sage of God's Post. I say things and just find them later. Questions? I knew I threw a lot at you. Yes.
What does the Quran say happened to Ishmael?
I don't know that far. He started, from Ishmael. Muhammad is a descendant from Ishmael. He lived in Mecca. Hagar's name is not mentioned, by the way, which is pretty interesting. And if you look at the Old Testament, you have Adam and Eve, you have Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives. No names. Sarah is mentioned, Hagar, and then you have the 3 other mothers, very few women in the 5 books of Moses. You have Dinah, You have Rebecca, Rachel, that's a whole nother story. How they got along or didn't get along.
That's the next talk.
That's the next one, yes. Actually, Noah's Ark was really interesting too. Everything you think you know about Noah's Ark, read the text. Not a lot of stuff, but enough. Question?
Isn't it true when the Bibles were printed over and over and over again? It seems like men have gotten all the power and gives them just something to have a child with.
In some translations, I was taught that women are very powerful, very strong. If a man marries an evil woman, he will become evil. And if a man marries a good woman, a God-fearing woman, he will become God-fearing. So it's the English that has changed, not the Hebrew. The Hebrew is identical, going all the way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls and things that we have found. The only thing that's changed is the English. And then we have something called nikudotes, which are little dots and dashes that teach you how to make the sounds. And that has been manipulated too. I just discovered that the word for naked is arum, that's plural. They were naked. It talks about Adam and Eve. And then, when it describes the snake, it's the same word, but he's sneaky. So they're either all sneaky or they're all naked. You can't change the word to be what you want it to be. Oh, you can, but then I'll find you.
Which translation would you say, which English translation would you recommend someone read if they're trying to find the English translation that's closest to the original Hebrew?
King James is one of the better ones. I have found very few, well now, they'll equal the problems in the regular Jewish text.
Right.
So, I mean, this is the woman's, I just got a new one that was gender neutral, and they left out that Abraham was there. I'm ready to give that one away. I mean, I get as many as I can, and that's the first thing I look at. And if they don't say that Adam was standing there with her when she ate of the fruit, I give it away, because they're just going by an old translation. I don't know why they're not looking. Because they're listening to what they learned and not using their eyes. Don't go by what you heard. You've got to go by what you see. And even there, that translation, people manipulated slavery. They gave their slaves Bibles and took out all the part about slavery. You're not allowed to keep a male slave for more than 7 years. You have to give them rest. You're not allowed to rape the women. There's so many rules that are written, but they just sort of took that part out. Just like people use the Bible to say women should be submissive. Though I always say, just like my big fat Greek wedding, we just sort of make them think they're doing what they want to do, but we're still in charge. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so just for clarity, you had mentioned that Hagar, when Hagar had her baby,
Ishmael.
he was going to be raised as Abraham's son and accepted in his Hebrew
Yes.
community, right?
Yes.
But when Sarah was pregnant and had her baby, it was decided that that child,
Yeah, he should go away. He
was
can't.
no longer a valid
Yes.
Hebrew in the society.
Yes.
And you said you disagreed with that.
Oh, I definitely disagree with that.
Right.
But I think it was meant to be for him to be alive and to move on and then be separated and to create the Muslim, or for Muhammad, from him to create the Muslim religion, because they were told many people would come from him.
So is that related to today's law that some Jewish faiths, Orthodox, I guess,
Yeah.
believe that the mother isn't Jewish, the child is?
That is correct. And it's interesting that you say that, because originally it was the father. It was patrilineal, so that Ishmael would have been following of Abraham's faith. And then they didn't always know who the father was. And it changed to become the mother. Some people now say if the child is raised Jewish, you're Jewish. Meaning if one parent is Jewish, and, well, I found a loophole. I was gonna say I don't want this on there, but it's okay. The loophole is that if you adopt a child, what you do is you put them in the mikvah, the ritual waters and prayers are said. So the child's been raised Jewish, but the mother was not Jewish, or the birth mother. So it's a very simple procedure. If the boy was not circumcised, and then you have to draw blood from the boy in that area if they were circumcised. If not, they're circumcised. So that's sort of a loophole if the child is raised Jewish. And to me, if the child wants to be Jewish.
I was told that it was when the mother gave birth to a child, you knew who the mother was.
Right, you knew who the mother was.
But you never knew who the father was.
And you didn't always know the father, so it changed. The Reform movement has gone back to it's either or. If you're raising, what makes a child Jewish? You don't have to believe anything, you don't have to do anything. So if your mother was Jewish or your grandmother, and we're finding a lot of people now from World War II, people who were converted to Catholicism really were Jewish. There are a lot of stories like that, and I even went back, we knew someone from the Inquisition. They were Marranos, the family, we were able to trace back, and they were really Jewish, but when they left, of course, out of fear, they did not practice Judaism. Someone from Stockton just had found that as well. Or a name, there's a name that's Hebrew, and clearly there's something with this name. I said, you've got to go ask questions. Other things. Just don't let people tell you that's what the Bible says, because it really may not be. And don't listen to movies. Movies often quote things from the Bible that don't even exist. There's a paper on that.
I'm going to take your class.
Anytime. I teach women in the Bible for freshmen. It's all about relationships and sexuality and dating and how people should be treating you and you as well. Old Testament in films, a lot of fun because we see what's wrong with the actual films like Noah's Ark. Jewish stories and storytelling. I did a lot of different things. That changes. All the comics, the comic writers original from the 1930s, the guys at Brooklyn and Cleveland, they were Jewish men. All kinds of Marcel, for those of you that are older that know, he was Jewish and he helped with the kinder transport. And so a lot of things that he did. So I just find new things, that music in the Bible is great. I haven't done it yet. The kids find music that refers to biblical figures and bring in and then talk about how the person is represented and if they like it or not. And Lilith is another one that she is not real. Very clear. Lilith is not real. She is not in the Bible. She is not in Isaiah. She is not real. She was made up originally with Gilgamesh and the Hoopaluta tree, and then it came to Ben, oh my goodness, I just forgot his name. And then it was written in a book. I forgot what, it'll come back to me. And we did find that original book in Cairo. The book was found, one of his original, I'll find it, I'll think of it. But she is not real. She's all made up. And that's a whole nother issue that males have used stories about her to run other people's lives. Is that politically good? Other questions? Yeah, I know. That's
well, getting into the women in the Bible, wasn't Jezebel much maligned? I mean, she was always this horrible person. She was eaten alive by dogs and stuff like that for her sins. But I read more about her a bit more, and it seems that she was not that evil.
as is bad. Now, for me, the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, in my translation, come directly or pretty close from God, because there's no way we would know what happened in the first couple books. And I can even justify the first 2 chapters very easily of creation being different, but being there. But in my mind, the prophets, the writings, and everything else were written by human beings without an influence of God, and so it's their interpretation of what happened. So I use them as stories. We find things archaeologically, but that I don't personally. I don't open up the book of prophecies and say, oh, that's what it says, because I don't know if someone did manipulate those words and how it's put out. I mean, King David's the most wonderful man, but he killed other people to get their wives. So, we've all got issues. All right, thank you again. Beautiful day outside. I haven't been struck down yet.
Yeah, so when I dropped the camera.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marcia. That was really wonderful. For the closing hymn, please rise in body and spirit. For number 100, I've got Peace Like a River. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, 3, and we're going to end on 3. So we're going to sing Peace Like a River, Joy Like a Fountain, Love Like an Ocean. I got peace like a river, I got peace like a river, I got peace like a river in my soul. I got peace like a river, I got peace like a river, I got peace like a river in my soul. I got joy like a fountain.
Thank you, Marcia. That was wonderful. And we'll hear the next stories. Let us read together the words for extinguishing the chalice. The extinguishes the flame,
but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
When I hear deliciously your voice whispering, come on back and talk to me. I'll move the world where you want to be. Find a groove sitting next to you, make me sing, make me wanna sway. Hard to find a reason not to stay. Every sight a mystery. You surprise me to me. I just want to stay close to you. My heart starts beating faster. Your name on my lips. and I believe in you, just the way you are. Every sigh, every laugh you cause in me makes me thankful. On the road to places you can choose to go, holding hands, walking along. Every time I sing this song, all roads they lead back to you, and I love you. And I seek you, and I believe in you, just the way you are. I see another road, another chance to grow, that leads to move ahead. I'll stand right next to you, urging you along toward the great unknown. Once you get into the garden, once you get into your soul, wherever this journey takes you, I want you to know. Have to know, need to know, I'll be your soft place to land. I'll be your soft place to land. Oh. And I love you, and I see you, and I believe in you, just the way you, just the way you, just the way you, just the way, just the way, just the way you are.
Thank you, Gina.
I wrote that. I wrote it for John.
Okay, there are a few announcements before we end our day. First of all, I want to apologize. I missed during the Joys and Concerns to mention to keep Colby in your thoughts and send her healing energy. She dislocated her hip yesterday, and but she is home and recuperating. So she sends her love.
We love you, Colby.
Sign-ups have started for the March 18th Circle Dinner, our first in 3 years, due to the COVID precautions. Circle dinners are a great way to get to know UU members and friends in a relaxed, small group atmosphere. In brief, for those of you who are new to the idea, interested folks sign up either as a couple or alone and are assigned to a dinner that includes 8 people. They are asked to bring one of the courses or to host the dinner in their home, if possible. Please consider signing up. The sign-up sheet is on the table in the rear of the sanctuary, there. And if you have any questions, see Marie or Betsy. There's Betsy. Marie is not here. Okay. Margaret Circle will be meeting this Thursday, March 2nd, at 1 o'clock, right here. The program, led by Dagoberian, will be a karaoke sing-along. Songs from the 1930s through the 1970s will be selected. and the words and music will be provided. All the women of the congregation are invited, and you do not need to consider yourself a good singer to be here to enjoy the fun. So there will be no, like, one person karaoke, it'll be joint karaoke, group karaoke. UUC is hosting a common read. Get your copy of Defund Fear, Safety Without Policing, Prisons, and Punishment by Zach Norris, and read along with us. Copies are available to borrow from the RE Library, Lending Library, and we will have a book discussion on June 18th. Join us next Sunday for Building a New Way, Our New Way, with my brother, Paul Utz, and as with many religious denominations, the pandemic has affected our community. As the pandemic ends, we see our community starting to grow again. As we adjust to our new reality, what have we learned that will help us to grow forward? How can we each contribute our time, talent, and treasure to ensure that a strong center for religious learning, social justice, and the community support continue to not just survive, but thrive? How can a strong community here help support each of us as individuals? Charter member Paul Utz will discuss how an investment in this community has paid dividends for him and his family, and how we can share this blessing while enriching our own lives. We warmly welcome all of you who are visiting us today. Parents are encouraged to stay for the final moment of worship and to retrieve their children from downstairs after the bell has sounded. Now let us share in a moment of silent reflection to consider today's message and the meaning it has in our lives.